You know, when a nation collapses, truth is usually the first thing to go. And from those ashes, what you get aren't facts. You get myths, stories that try to make sense of the senseless. Today, we're digging into one of the most stubborn legends from the American Civil War, the myth of the lost Confederate gold. And when power shatters, the pieces have to go somewhere. The secrets, the money, the ambitions of a government that no longer exists, they don't just evaporate. They change form. Those scattered fragments, they become the seeds of legends, stories about hidden fortunes and shadowy figures who got away. We're going to trace the real story of one of those escapes and see exactly how it gave birth to a powerful and completely false myth. So to really understand the myth, we have to go back to the very moment it was born, the death of the Confederacy. Think about the sheer chaos of that moment. The entire chain of command just breaks. The treasury's empty and its records have been deliberately torched. And in that complete power vacuum, the government's top leaders are suddenly fugitives, all fleeing south with no idea what comes next. And right at the heart of this frantic exodus, you've got two men. Their paths will diverge, and in doing so, they'll define not just the end of the war, but the beginning of a legend. On one side, you have Jefferson Davis. He's the president, and he's about to become the symbol of the lost cause. And on the other, there's Judah P. Benjamin, his Secretary of State, a man who was, by all accounts, a brilliant strategist who would just vanish from the American story. Look, you can't overstate how close Benjamin was to the center of power. He wasn't just another cabinet member. He held 3 of the most powerful positions, sometimes seeming like he was the entire inner circle. Often called the brains of the Confederacy, he knew its secrets better than almost anyone. Now, as Union forces were closing the net from the north and the west, the map itself started to dictate what was possible. For anyone trying to get out, one state became the last desperate doorway to the outside world. And in those critical weeks after Richmond fell, the fates of these two men just completely split. While Davis and his entourage were being hunted down in Georgia, Benjamin was moving differently, quietly, methodically, making his way to the Florida coast. For one man, the story was ending. For the other, it was just getting started. I mean, the difference is just night and day, isn't it? Davis gets captured, becomes a prisoner. Benjamin, traveling alone, in disguise, he successfully makes it through Florida. And he's reportedly carrying not just money, but sensitive diplomatic papers, basically the last remaining pieces of the Confederate state. And this is really where the myth gets its legs. See, Benjamin didn't just escape. He succeeded, wildly. He gets to England and achieves a level of success that was almost unbelievable, becoming a Queen's Counsel, a real pillar of the British legal world. This incredible second act is what made his story so memorable, and it's what fueled all the speculation for decades to come. So Benjamin's actual documented escape story created the perfect template for a legend. But over time, the story began to twist, and the blame for a crime that never happened got pinned on the wrong man. All right, let's get to it. The central question. If Benjamin escaped so successfully, did he take the treasury with him? Well, the simple answer is, we don't know for sure. And that uncertainty, that's exactly the fertile ground where this myth took root. The Confederate government basically set the stage for this myth themselves. By burning their own financial records, they created a total vacuum of information. With no documents, there was no way to account for anything. All you had was chaos, rumors, and one very high-profile official who had made a clean getaway. So let's put the myth and the documented reality side by side. The myth says a villain stole the gold, but the record tells a very different story. Judah P. Benjamin, the guy who actually escaped, was never even charged with theft. But over the years, the legend kind of migrated to other figures, like David Levy Yulee, a man who, ironically, never fled, was captured and imprisoned, and ended the war completely broke. The myth needed a villain, and history just kind of assigned the role to the wrong person. So why? Why did this myth stick around for so long, and why did it get so mixed up? Well, the answer isn't in the evidence. It's in our need for a simple story. Benjamin's true story had all the perfect ingredients. You've got a man at the absolute center of power. You've got a daring escape against all odds. You've got a missing fortune and destroyed records. And to top it all off, a successful new life lived completely out of reach. It's a story that's almost too good not to embellish. And that's the real power of a myth, isn't it? The truth of the Confederacy's collapse was messy. It was bureaucratic. It was chaotic. There wasn't one bad guy who ran off with the loot. There was just dissolution. The myth of the stolen gold gives us something much easier to swallow: a single, simple explanation and a single villain to blame for it all. In the end, the real story of Judah P. Benjamin is actually way more fascinating than the legend it created. It's a story about strategy, about survival, about completely reinventing a life. And it's a powerful reminder that when we look at the past, the real question isn't who's the villain? It's what does the evidence actually tell us?